Grant Robertson.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Well, there we have it. The government's solution to the housing crisis in Auckland is to give up. It's to give up and say, we can't solve the housing crisis in Auckland, so we're going to pay people $5,000 to get out. Well, newsflash, Minister, all of those places you're sending people to have State House waiting lists. Where are you going to put them, Minister? The government can't wish the problem away, write out a cheque for $5,000 and say, we've solved the housing crisis. That is an admission of defeat from a government thoroughly out of ideas and out of touch, Mr Speaker. But I thought this morning that maybe, just maybe, the Prime Minister had worked out what was happening in New Zealand, because he told Paul Henry this morning that he slept like a baby. And if by that he meant waking up every hour, crying his eyes out, then he was right, because that's how he should be feeling about New Zealand today. He's like a less cool version of the Fonz, who used to be able, he couldn't ever say the word sorry. He used to go, he couldn't say sorry. John Key can't say crisis. He just can't get the word out. Well, there's a housing crisis, Mr Speaker. Everyone in New Zealand knows it. 75% of New Zealanders have come out and told the national government they're failing on housing. 61% of their own supporters have told them they're failing on housing, and yet this government will not open its eyes up. We have the lowest home ownership rates in 65 years. There is a shortfall of 40,000 houses in Auckland, and all Nick Smith can give us is a cemetery and an exploding substation. It takes 9 times the income of a typical person in Auckland to buy a home. 9 times. And we hear the crocodile tears on the other side of the house about homelessness. Well, what would have been done had they not sold off 2,676 state houses since they have been in office? And every single time a Labour-led government comes into office, we have to make up for the National Party degrading social housing. 13,000 homes sold in the 1990s, another few thousand sold in this government. This government has an appalling record on housing and is refusing to face up to what every New Zealander knows. After 8 years, there's no one else to blame. It's the National Party's fault. They've got to take responsibility instead of trying to look back to the past. They should be the ones fronting up to New Zealanders about what they have done. Mr Speaker, there might not be a fiscal deficit in tomorrow's budget, but there will be a social deficit. People living in cars and garages, people who take 6 years longer to get an operation than they used to, mental health in crisis, 300,000 kids in poverty, 144,000 people unemployed. And Tolly might want to answer to the people of Gisborne, where unemployment is now 10.9%. More than 1 in 10 people, Mrs Tolley, in Gisborne out of work under this national government. And around the country, 87,200 young people aged between 15 and 24, not in employment, not in education, or not in training. That's the future of New Zealand that National's creating. That's the problem the Labour-led government will have to clean up, because this government is letting a generation down. Mr Speaker, there are 4 things that should be in the budget tomorrow, and one of them is very simple. Jonathan Coleman will get this. 3 words, Mr Coleman: build more homes. Build more homes. That's what this budget should be focusing on. We should also be funding health properly to keep up with the demographic pressures, not playing around with the numbers, not denying reality as Dr Coleman would do. And we need a real commitment in this country to a free education system, the bedrock of opportunity. Parents are facing more and more costs. Tertiary students are in more and more debt. And we need to invest in decent work opportunities. Wherever you live in New Zealand, there should be the chance to earn a good living and raise your family. And one more thing, Mr Speaker. Shouldn't we see a budget where everybody pays their fair share? Like a lot of New Zealanders, we on this side of the House are sick of the government standing up for the tax evaders and the tax avoiders. It's time for every New Zealander to pay their fair share so every New Zealander gets a fair go. Mr Speaker, this government is out of touch. It is arrogant. What New Zealanders need in this budget is hope and opportunity, and that is what the Labour Party stands for.